Okay, so students, today we are going to discuss about this land use planning and development regulation for disaster risk management. So basically, this is a part of disaster risk management that is related to proper land use as well as to develop the regulations regarding development, how to develop in particular city or in particular area. Okay. So basically, this disaster risk management, when we are talking about this disaster risk management, it includes risk identification. We have to first identify the risk. So in which area, which kind of risk factors are there? Okay, whether it is related to earthquake or tsunami or flood prone region. So first is to identify the risk. Then first, if you have identified the risk, the next process is to try for reduction. So next part is risk reduction, and third last one, that is overall disaster management. So if you are doing this or applying these two measures, then it may be directly helpful for your disaster management. So basically you can say that this disaster risk reduction is a method or tool to reduce the impacts of natural and human made hazards. So we have to develop certain tools or methods so that we can be able to reduce the impact of this natural as well as man made disaster. So this land use planning, proper planning, how to use land, and also development regulations. So all the regulations, building bylaws, and whatever legal framework that we can frame, then it is very essential for disaster risk reduction and overall management of disaster. So this technique, it is a strategic approach with the technical components. So major technical components which are included in this is land use planning, proper land कहाँ पे कौन सा use होगा. So you have to bifurcate that with the zoning. Next is infrastructure planning. Proper infrastructure should be there. All the infrastructure, basic infrastructure that should be available. Next is education, preparedness, and response by developing the regulations. So these three are very important aspect that is to be followed. So you can say this activity, it is a long-term development activity, and which is recognized as an integral part of sustainable development. If you are going to plan for sustainable development, and this sustainable development is very essential nowadays because we are facing all the different types of pollution and climate change and whatever environmental degradation, and also due to all these activities, the number of disaster that are also increasing. So if you are planning for the sustainable development, then this activity, it is recognized as an integral part of sustainable development. So we have to think for the future generation, and we have to develop sustainably. So this is very essential part of that. So what is land use planning? So this land use planning is how human beings are using land. Okay, and it is the process of regulating the use of land such a way that to promote more desirable social and environmental outcome. हम जैसे भी हम यूज कर रहे हैं उसका जो आउटकम आ रहा है वो सोशली एंड एनवायरमेंटल फ्रेंडली होना चाहिए. ओके, एज वेल एज मोर एफिशिएंट यूज ऑफ रिसोर्सेज. वॉट एवर रिसोर्सेज वी आर हैविंग, that we should try to utilize it in a very efficient manner. But this proper land use planning to design, it is a very challenging issue. Okay, because there are many conflicts that are always there with how to use land. Okay, and all the different segment of the populations, they are always having arguments and conflicting views and conflicting values about deciding how to use the land, and particularly when it become more challenging if we are having this competing views about the role of the land when we are trying for reducing the collective exposure to risk. कोई भी एक पर्टिकुलर लैंड है जहाँ पे रिस्क है एंड वहाँ पे कैसे लैंड यूज करना है. सो ऑलवेज इट्स अ कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग इशू. सो इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट how to go for the proper land use planning, but this planning has to be done, and it is very powerful mitigation tool. Okay, as it seeks to mitigate the risk and vulnerability from several hazards and ultimately disasters. So this planning and control of land use, it includes the general policy. So सरकार को उसमें actively participate करना पड़ेगा. They have to develop the policies. They have to go for certain legal options, and they have to prepare certain program and plans for the urban development as well as for the rural development also, and cover economical, environmental, social, and political aspects. So it includes so many aspects, so that proper policies are to be framed. So this land use planning, if you want to apply in present cities, so it includes two main categories. एक्सपांसन ऑफ सिटी, अगर आप एक्सपांसन ऑफ सिटी के लिए जा रहे हैं तो कैसे डेवलपमेंट करेंगे, कैसे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्लानिंग करेंगे, कैसे लैंड यूज करेंगे, कैसे जोनिंग करेंगे, सो दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड सेकेंड इज सिटी रिस्टोरेशन, आप किसी सिटी को रिस्टोर कर रहे हैं. ओके, सो दिस आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट फॉर द प्रेजेंट सिटी. न्यूली डेवलप कर रहे हैं तो इजीली इट इज इजी, ओके, बट फॉर प्रेजेंट सिटी to incorporate this land use planning, it become more challenging. And the regulations may include one or more of the aspect for the urban approach. So zoning regulations, कौन से जोन में कौन सी एक्टिविटी होगी, रेजिडेंशियल एक्टिविटी कहाँ होगी, कमर्शियल कहाँ पे होगी, देन योर इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटी. सो यू हैव टू क्लियर कट हैविंग दैट zoning regulations. Then land segregation regulations, you have to segregate the land. Then there are certain regulations regarding building height. If you are living in certain residential area, so उससे ज़्यादा आप हाइट पे नहीं जा सकते. ओके, ऑल्सो पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी, उससे ज़्यादा डेवलपमेंट नहीं कर सकते. सो दिस पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी पर hectare or per square kilometer or per meter square area, how many people that can they can live. So that the population density they have to decide. And observing this regulation and strategies related to location, physical and performance factor. So all they have to decide. And through this it is possible to minimize the physical vulnerability and fatalities. So basically these are all related to construction aspect, that physical vulnerability can be reduced. And before doing any land use planning and development regulations, it is necessary to identify the risk factor. Okay, so that is the first step. First is to identify the risk. So we will just look at which are the different urban risk factors that are involved. So first, कोई भी urban area है उसमें unplanned development pattern देखा जाता है. ठीक है, काफ़ी जगह पे बहुत सारी झुग्गियाँ हो जाती है, मतलब झोपड़ियाँ बहुत सारी है. So that kind of uncontrolled urban sprawl, that is nothing but कोई भी एक एरिया में बहुत सारा population हो गया है, तो that area will become congested. Okay, so it is very difficult to manage such kind of unplanned development in the mega cities, and even during normal time it is very difficult to maintain. So just think the situation when it comes to any disaster. So even in the normal time they cannot manage it properly, so how will they manage if there is certain disaster? Next is hazardous industrial plants existing with the congested informal settlement result in the disaster. कोई भी ऐसा unplanned development हो गया है, आजू बाजू industries है. So if certain disaster takes place, industrial accidents or any industrial disaster takes place, so major loss would be there. Okay, then informal construction made up of substandard material results in more casualties during disasters. So all of you are knowing the thing, whenever there is a flood, people are living nearby that river, they are having not that proper houses. So सब स्टैंडर्ड मटेरियल का बना होता है, झोपड़ियाँ होती है, तो हमेशा हर साल वो डूब जाता है. सो this kind of informal construction जब भी सब स्टैंडर्ड मटेरियल से बनता है, so it is having maximum loss of life that is observed, and that is happening every year. So we should plan for that. That kind of settlement that should not be allowed. Okay, a built environment susceptible to natural hazards resulting from the unregulated building practices. कहीं पे भी जाके आप बिल्डिंग बना देते हैं, ठीक है. So that is not actually environmental friendly also. And historical buildings that are not restored or properly secured for hazards, because historical buildings so many years has passed. So some of the components there are that are liable to be damaged whenever some earthquake is there or some other disaster. So that proper restoration has to be taken place at a regular interval. So this vulnerability of the urban regions to disaster is intensified by physical डेंसिफिकेशन ऑफ द सेटलमेंट. बहुत सारा फिजिकल डेंसिफिकेशन हो जाता है, पर्टिकुलर एरिया में सेटलमेंट हो जाता है. हाई कॉन्सेंट्रेशन ऑफ बिजनेस इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड इकोनॉमिक एसेट, बहुत सारा एक ही एरिया में सब कुछ पॉपुलेशन भी है, बिजनेस एक्टिविटीज़ भी हो रही है, इकोनॉमिक एसेट से रिलेटेड कार्य हो रहा है. सो दैट विल all intensify whenever such disaster take place. They become more vulnerable. And also convergence of the vital network along with the critical facilities and transportation. So these are all the conditions that will make more vulnerable to that particular region whenever such disaster take place. So this land use, proper land use planning and regulation that are very essential for disaster risk reduction. So if you want to reduce the risk of disaster, then we have to go for the proper land use planning, zoning, and proper development of regulations to control all this activity. So all these urban risk factors that are just shown in the form of pictures. So dense development without adequate escape route. अभी यहाँ पे कुछ you can see it's how it is very much dense development. So there is no place, no escape route. Even some emergency vehicle cannot enter in such areas. So in old city areas where uh, the dense development is there, so it is very difficult to manage during disaster. Informal construction made up of substandard materials. So here you can see it is nearby river. Okay, so whenever there is a flood, such kind of house, they are definitely going to be damaged. So here also you can see that are informal construction. जो भी material available है, they are just building it. So that will increase the risk. Then unsafe old structures. So these are very common scenario in India. So many old structures that are there. Okay, so that is to be removed because that will increase the risk to the people living in that particular such building. Hazardous land use existing with congested informal settlement. So here you can see this industrial effluent that is coming in nearby river, and some dump of some hazardous waste is done, and people are coming here. Small children, they are going to school using this path. So such kind of hazardous activity, and here you can see this congested environment, this polluted environment, and this historical building, they are not properly managed. So these are all the risk factors that are to be considered before applying for the risk reduction criteria. So this land use planning and development regulation of disaster risk reduction includes many aspects, okay? But this land use planning, zoning, infrastructure planning, and building regulations, that this four, they are very important aspect, okay? And apart from that, other aspect also you can apply. So that is housing design and finance, flood and earthquake proofing, promoting development of new financial tool, agriculture, aquaculture, logging activities. These are some other activities or other aspects that are that can be also included in that. Design and construction of critical infrastructure, lifeline facility, existing base map and location of hazard prone area. So these are all other activities, but the major four activities that is to be done is here. There is a list of this first four activities. So more focus should be on that. So first is zoning. So zoning is very essential for any city. Okay. So this zoning is a tool that most cities use to govern. So how they are using it. Okay. Either it is a residential zone, commercial zone, industrial zone. Such bifurcation is done. So here in this figure, you can see this green area. It is the green space. Then this that government offices. Then residential yellow color. Then this red color, it is commercial. So just looking at this sketch, you can say that it is having good green space available in this particular city. So this particular zoning, it is very essential. Also the size of building, how buildings relate to their surrounding, including other building, open spaces are available or not. That are all the things that is to be taken care while whenever such zones are identified in particular city. So it is used to separate more impactful uses like industries and manufacturing unit from more sensitive uses like residential. So always they should try to separate the industrial area from the residential and sensitive use area. So that bifurcation is generally done in zoning, so that whenever such a disaster takes place, there will be clear-cut bifurcations from the impactful area to the sensitive area. So planned zoning and proper urban settlement planning of housing is the need of today for the disaster risk management, and that leads to the sustainable development. So this is very essential part कि कैसे आपका city develop हुआ है, okay, and how they can act at the time of disaster. If it is done properly, then you can manage it properly. So this zoning tool. So we will discuss these four major aspects in this manner: the planning tool, then specific measures, what you can do in that, how they are helpful in disaster risk reduction, and it is the major aspect is to reduce the disaster risk. But what incidental benefit you can get by applying such measures? So first is zoning. So identify the vulnerable areas within a region. So this is very essential कि जो भी vulnerable area है which are prone to a particular disaster, flood, cyclone, settlement of soil or anything, any disaster, then you have to identify it. So how they can help in risk reduction? So it may reduction in the damage to property. So you are knowing you are living in vulnerable area, you are going for the such kind of construction, so that will reduce the damage to property. Next is keep a check on the density. So strict vigilance is required on the how much area that can be built and how many people they can live in a particular area. Okay, so that density strict vigilance is to be applied, and implement the limits on building height if it is necessary. So this is very essential. So this will also minimize the loss of life during the building collapse. And what is incidental benefit? More open space and less pressure on the infrastructure, because you are applying by through building laws कि इससे ज़्यादा आप कंस्ट्रक्ट नहीं कर सकते, तो ओपन स्पेस रखना इट इज़ वेरी एसेंशियल. सो मोर स्पेस विल बी अवेलेबल, लेस प्रेशर ऑन द इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. नेक्स्ट इज कंट्रोल और प्रोहिबिट द डेवलपमेंट इन ओवर डेवलप्ड एरिया. आपको पता चल गया सिटी एरिया में अभी तो डेवलपमेंट का कोई चांस ही नहीं है, सो डिक्लेयर इट एज डेवलपमेंट कंट्रोल जोन. सो यू द अथॉरिटीज कैन नॉट गिव परमिशन फॉर द फर्दर डेवलपमेंट because it is already overpopulated and overdeveloped area. So that kind of thing can be done. So what will happen? Reduction of the damage to property whenever such disaster take place, and incidental benefit that you can get, creation of more livable environment. Okay. The next is encourage a mix of land use to have a fair distribution of population at all places at any point of time. So basically, in all the areas, all the facilities should be available. That is the important thing. So mixed land use area, that is to be encouraged. So this will also help in minimize the loss of life during the building collapse, because all the facilities available in that particular area. Okay, lifeline hospitals be available, education building be available. So all the facilities can be catered within short period of time whenever such disaster take place. Also, this balanced land use with efficient transportation. So this is the incidental benefit that can be obtained with the proper zoning. So this proper zoning of a particular city or a particular area, it is very essential. Next is land use planning. This is very important. So in the land use planning, the specific measures, these are all the specific measures that can be taken. Provide adequate space which can be used as refuge area. आपके पास कुछ तो open space होना चाहिए कि whenever such disaster take place, people can settle there. Okay, so such kind of open space can be utilized during earthquake or raised shelter during flood. So you should identify which area that can be utilized as a refugee area whenever such kind of incidents take place. So that will result in reduction in loss of life, and more space is available for the community enjoyment. During the normal time, you can use it as that particular field for playing, etc. Okay. Then provide roads of adequate quality, proper, so that the movement of emergency vehicle that will become easier. So that will result in fast rescue of the casualties, and quick relief can be provided. And well managed flow of traffic in normal time. If you are having good road network, then it will be well managed during the normal time also. Ensure the strategic placement of the essential physical infrastructure like hospitals. So strategic placement करना बहुत important है, because this is the lifeline kind of building that is required at the time of disaster. Okay, so here also it is helpful in saving the life of people, and during the normal time, a well planned land use catering to daily needs. So normally it will be useful to people, but at the time of disaster it will be more useful. Then strengthen the connectivity with the neighboring countries or the neighboring region, not the countries but region. So whenever some extra help is needed, so that they can take. So it may be useful to avail the quick supplies and medical aids, and better regional prosperity can be obtained during the normal time. Then stabilization of river banks, slope, and redevelopment of riverways. So if you need, you can divert the flow of river also. Proper river bank slope can be provided. So stabilization is very important. So this will also reduce the loss of life. and in the normal time this river can be used as the connectivity between the two neighboring areas during normal time. Okay. Also provide or recover the sidewalks in the congested area. पूरा का पूरा आपको कंस्ट्रक्शन से फिल अप नहीं करना है. यू कैन प्रोवाइड द साइडवॉक्स इन द कंजेस्टेड एरिया, सो इट कैन बी यूजफुल फॉर easy evacuation and healthy environment in normal time. So these are all how to use land and how to provide the facilities that are very important aspect of disaster risk reduction. So this integration of disaster mitigation planning into land use planning is very important. Okay. And this, if you want to do all these things, then you have to go for such kind of preliminary activities. Some preparatory work is required. You have to collect the data collection, research and analysis of available documents. So you have to, whenever you have to plan such thing, you need some data collection and research and analysis. कहाँ पे क्या है, क्या problem है, everything has to be identified. Creation of project team. You have to define the team. Coordination with urban local bodies and field investigation is to be done. So whatever local bodies are there, authorities are there, they have to coordinate and with the field investigation. Formulation of risk sensitive land use plan. So this is very essential कि जहाँ पे भी risk है, so accordingly you have to plan the land use. Then advocacy campaign, this is very important. Then this drafting of zoning ordinance, कौन से जोन में क्या होगा, everything they have to draft. Formulating and implementing the building codes, so this is very essential part. Customized for a particular region based on the region's vulnerability. So depending upon the vulnerability of a particular area, the building codes can be customized. It's not fixed for everyone. Okay. Then inter-institutional coordination can be done, strengthening of the local institutions. So these are all very essential, and such kind of land use planning is to be implemented in the disaster mitigation planning. So the vulnerability of the region may be reduced by adopting two basic principles, that is increase the intrinsic disaster fighting potential, खुद का fighting potential बढ़ाओ, at the same time assuring the connectivity to other region के साथ भी connected रहो, so to avail the external help at the time of emergency at as early as possible. So these two things are to be done. These are the basic principles in a particular vulnerable region. So next is infrastructure planning. Infrastructure should be properly designed against effect of disaster and should not be damaged during disaster. So basically this infrastructure planning, so all the basic infrastructure that should be proper. So good drainage network. So if this good drainage network is obtained, so it will reduce the loss of life and property whenever there is a flood, etc., and reduce water logging in the normal period. नेक्स्ट इज कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ गुड वाटर सप्लाई एंड सीवरेज नेटवर्क. अगर प्रॉपर वाटर सप्लाई पाइपलाइन है, सीवरेज नेटवर्क प्रॉपर है, सो दिस विल फैसिलिटेट द रिकवरी पार्ट, सो यू कैन रिकवर इन बेटर मैनर, एंड ऑल्सो इट विल रिड्यूस द हेल्थ रिस्क एंड गिव बेटर एनवायरमेंट ड्यूरिंग योर नॉर्मल टाइम. देन कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ सिक्योर सिस्टम फॉर लेइंग इलेक्ट्रिकल केबल, प्रॉपर इलेक्ट्रिकल केबल होना चाहिए, नहीं तो करंट वरंट लग जाएगा एट द टाइम ऑफ डिजास्टर. सो इजी टू कॉल फॉर रिलीफ. Then better quality of life that is possible through this better electrical cable connection. All this higher standard road, railway, power and communication infrastructure. So all the infrastructure that should be proper. So this infrastructure that can help to call at the time of disaster, and also better quality of life that you can obtain at the time of normal duration, not at the time of disaster but during normal life. So that will be the incidental benefit that can be obtained by providing proper infrastructure planning. So all the infrastructure that should be properly secured against all the disaster risk. Next important thing is building regulations. So this is very important. Enforcement part is coming up. So all the building code, it should be updated. उसको regular basis पे update करना चाहिए. And with the advent of the new information and technology, whatever new technologies are coming, based on that you have to just go on updating whatever building codes you are having. And this enforcement of the building code is a critical and vital issue of disaster management. If you are having certain codes available on paper but it is not implemented, it is not enforced, then there is no meaning. So proper enforcement through the regulating agencies, it is very important part of building regulations. So in the building regulations, these are the specific measures that can be adopted. So local authorities to enforce that all new and existing building meant for the public use and high-rise residential building must be considered seismic safety in the design. So this is very essential, and this should be properly followed. Okay, so particularly all the public building and high-rise building, इनका ऊपर तो seismic safety का whatever that code it should be applicable. So it will minimize the loss of life due to building collapse, but there is no incidental benefit of that. Next is relocation of the informal settlers and people residing in the unsafe structure to the properly engineered housing which are affordable. सो जो भी जैसे झुग्गी बस्ती में रह रहे हैं, जो अनसेफ स्ट्रक्चर में रह रहे हैं, दे शुड बी आइडेंटिफाइड एंड दे शुड बी रीलोकेटेड. And for that, in India we are having that LIG scheme and MIG scheme. In इसमें प्रधान मंत्री आवास योजना, that kind of scheme that in which the proper engineered structure and proper engineered housing जो properly secured है against the disaster, उसमें उनको settle करना चाहिए. Okay, so that will help in reducing the need of evacuation during disasters. So now they have just relocated themselves in a good engineered structure. There is no need to evacuate them. Okay, so many people that those who were residing nearby a river, and every year they were facing such kind of thing, that is every year there is a flood. If they are moving to such kind of housing, then there is no need to evacuate at the time of disaster. So more decongested and cleaner environment can be obtained to that particular population. Earlier, those who were living in unsafe area. Then next is incorporate the retrofitting measures. So modifications are to be done, and in all the buildings which are historical and cultural relevance, to be old हो चुके हैं, historical heritage structure है, they should be done. Retrofitting should be done. So some modifications that if they are needed, that is to be done. So that will reduce the risk of the building collapse during that disaster. And the next incidental benefit is that we are trying for the preservation of our heritage. So this cultural heritage, at the same time we are protecting them, we are preserving them, so that incidental benefit is also obtained. And at the time of disaster there is a risk, whatever that risk that is there, that we are reducing. So these four major things, if that can be applied in a particular region, then it is a very essential tool for mitigation, and that will reduce the risk of disaster. Now other tools are also there that are minor, not the minor tool, but these are also very much effective. Okay, so housing design and finance. So proper housing design that is to be carried out, and some financial mechanism that are to be designed. So difficult to apply the individual house mein it is very difficult, but government can encourage the home builders to use the disaster resilient design and material and techniques for the construction. So they can encourage those builders who are involved in such kind of building large housing colonies. Okay, so and by law or by encouragement, so both are possible. Okay, so if they are living in disaster prone region, it should be enforced. If they are not living in disaster prone region, they can be encouraged by giving some subsidies, etc. अवेयरनेस अमंग्स द इंडिविजुअल फॉर एडॉप्शन. अगर आप अपने घर का काम करा रहे हैं, आपको पता है कि मैं कौन से एरिया में रह रहा हूँ, यहाँ पे रिस्क है. सो इफ यू आर गोइंग फॉर द इंडिविजुअल कंस्ट्रक्शन, देन ऑल्सो यू कैन इंसिस्ट दैट कॉन्ट्रैक्टर कि भाई आपको ऐसा ऐसा बनाना है, मुझे इस रिस्क से बचना है. सम फाइनेंशियल इंसेंटिव्स और टूल्स दैट कैन मोटिवेट द पीपल. So if some subsidies or some incentives, if they are designed, then people, they will be motivated to go for such kind of things. Okay, then flood proofing and earthquake proofing, this is particularly applied to that particular zone only. Okay, so flood prone region or earthquake prone region, then to reduce the vulnerability, all the structure they should be flood proof or earthquake proof. So this is by enforcement, by building laws, that should be done. Okay, promoting the development of new financial tools. So here there is a need to develop the catastrophic risk finance and risk insurance and catastrophic bonds. So nowadays this corona is going on, also some policies that are coming up related to corona. So such kind of some financial tools that may give protection to people whenever such disaster take place, loss of life of some damages that are taking place. So such tools that are to be developed, and this risk and insurance should be mandatory in hazard prone state and area. तो वहाँ पे तो उनको compulsorily they have to take such kind of risk assurance when they are living in a that particular hazard prone state or areas. Design and construction of the critical infrastructure and lifeline facilities. So these are very important in all the sectors, in all the areas, hospital facilities and school facilities. Because normally, whenever such disaster take place, for the settlement of the people or the after evacuating people from that particular area, schools, that municipal schools that are used for their as a shelter. Okay, so that schools, proper hospitals that are to be properly constructed and that are considered to be the critical infrastructure or and the lifeline facilities. Then locational classification should be used for such lifeline planning. जो भी lifeline facility है, normally it is schools and hospitals that are to be planned according to their location. If certain hilly areas are there, then they should are more prone to earthquake, landslide, snow avalanches, and storm. So all the measures related to this that are to be applied in all these lifeline facilities whenever they are constructing. In the coastal region, then they are more prone to cyclones, tsunami, and flood. So that kind of construction, which are cyclone proof, tsunami proof, or flood proof. So all the measures related to that, so that to reduce the risk of that particular disaster. Then river basins and watershed areas. So they are also related to flood and earthquake. Then so that measures are to be applied. Then geographical fragile plains and other like desert, forest, and marshy land. So in whatever area you are there, building of such lifeline facilities, it has to be done based on the location. So this locational classification is very essential, and accordingly, whatever risks are there, accordingly the construction has to be done. Then existing base map and location of the hazard prone area. So basically this master plan जब भी बनता है must identify the national hazard area through hazard risk and vulnerability analysis. So this is to be done for any city. जब भी master plan बनता है तो you should know that your area is prone to which risk, particularly for particular disaster. So this hazard risk and vulnerability analysis is to be done for a particular area, for a particular hazard. And once you are knowing the risk, you can better way plan for that. Okay, so risk sensitive land use zones need to be worked out separately for all types of disasters. So once you have identified your risk sensitive area, then proper land use zoning, so everything can be separated out from the risk prone region and low risk region. So that separate policies can be framed for this kind of area. So for that is HRV mapping is very important. Then agriculture and aquaculture. So generally this is assessed for the flood prone region जहाँ पे भी flood आता है. So proper agricultural and aquaculture की क्या facilities है that is to be assessed, because what happens whenever such this agricultural it is excessively developed, then it will reduce the drainage path due to development of the agricultural practices. So it should be checked okay, if some drainage path that is obstructed due to such activities, then proper due to lack of this drainage path, the more floods that are coming up. So that way they should plan for that. Then logging activities. Logging activities means basically related to destruction of forest. Okay, so that is assessed for the hilly regions as it may result in the destabilized slope. अगर ज़्यादा कट कर दिया आपने अगर रास्ता बनाने के लिए भी आपने अगर उसको कट किया, so that will destabilize the slope and it will increase the chances of this landslide and increase mud flow in the river. So whenever there is a landslide, normally in the hilly region, nearby a river might be there. So whenever such landslides are there, most of the mud flow that is going in river. So that is to be assessed that too much logging activities that should not be allowed in such region, and development should be also under control. Too much that tunneling work etc should not be allowed. Okay, then afforestation. must be done in logged areas जहाँ पे already deforestation हो चुका है. So replantation and afforestation must be done just to secure such sensitive area against destabilized slope and landslide, etc. Then priorities should be fixed for the protection of the building based on their importance. So all the buildings, they are having certain priorities. So based on priorities, you have to fix protection of the building. So from the defense installation, then public utilities, lifeline structures. So in priority wise, you have to fix कि किस पे ज़्यादा हमको, if you are not having the proper fund, then you have to fix the priorities. Then accordingly you can apply. Then next is commercial center, public and semi-public institution, government office, park, playground, recreational area. So always you have to fix the priorities where the protection is required, and where the most important aspect of this particular zoning, land use planning, etc., should be applied, and disaster proof construction is to be applied. So the priority is also a very deciding factor whenever it is in the disaster prone region. So this land use planning, zoning, regulations, that are very essential part of disaster risk management. Okay, so thank you very much. So I hope that whatever part that I have discussed with you, that will be helpful to you. So thank you very much.